Hello everyone, my name is Socrates Schouten. I work at Waag, Institute for Technology and Society. And we are studying the emergence of new technologies, amongst which new energy technologies, including positive energy districts. As a researcher, I'm very much interested in the role of social innovation for the realization of PEDs. Most PEDs are primarily seen as being composed of technical innovation. So the development of new ways of generating electricity, combining different sources of energy in order to manage ebbs and flows and to create the best outcomes of the, let's say, the messiness of supply and demand on the energy grid. Most of that can be tackled through technical innovation, but importantly, it's part of a very major energy transition. And there are many different roles that take a part in that transition. In addition to the technologies for the generation of electricity and for managing their consumption, we know that these PED technologies will rely to a large extent on data and algorithmic technology, because actually it takes lots of micromanagement of supply and demand. And that whole stack of technology, which we also call it the technological stack, is a very important part of the PED transition. But at the same time, we also know that there's many new roles emerging for actors, so for citizens, for NGOs, for governments, etc. So a lot of that is now being organized through new legislation. Both in Europe, but also in the member states, such as the Netherlands, we have legislation under preparation that brings explicit new roles to energy communities. Energy communities are at the least legal bodies of neighbors, of residents, that together manage their collective energy question. And it should be up to them to figure out what is the best solution for their local problem. It's important for us all to consider what our new role will be in the energy transition. We could rely on the state and the market to provide the solutions for us. But now we will have to play a role ourselves as citizens. Currently, there is a lapse in the amount of energy communities that are experimenting and finding their own way with their neighbors. But that's just really a small part of society that's currently actively involved. And we still have to wait and see what are potential roles for the larger audience. I can imagine that many citizens are actually already interested to find out what is the best solution for their particular situation. And the question is really how then they will allow themselves to take the leap into the new energy future. So PEDs provide part of the solution because it's this technology stack that I just talked about. But for the success of it, the social acceptance, we need to figure out different models for different types of situation. Social innovation comes into play whenever there's more uncertainty. So sometimes you are able to find an energy source that will provide most of the energy in a PED, and the residents can just rely on the offer that's being made. But in many cases, there will be more uncertainty when it comes to what to expect over next winter. For example, currently we're seeing surges in energy prices that we didn't see coming. And we're not as sure as what to expect, for example, in 2 or 5 or 10 years. So whereas on the one hand, we can rely, and we should rely on the success of new technologies that will manage the ebbs and flows, we should also, looking forward, invest in the social capabilities of communities to find themselves and see what will work best in their local environment. For example, if you have 2 neighborhoods adjacent to each other, one of them with relatively wealthy people that can manage their own business, but the other district will be, the socioeconomic status will be lower, they will need more help, but they do also have lots of capabilities that are relevant. So this is a type of question that the government cannot just address top-down, and neither do private companies immediately provide the right offering. So we see lots of interesting experiments where those neighborhoods start working together, And actually, those different contexts might also improve the energy balance across those different housing blocks. The introduction of positive energy districts has a lot of implications for residents. They will probably see more effects of their own consumption on day-to-day level. That could be whether they are being informed through a smart display in their home, or because they have to negotiate with neighbors on how to actually use and supply energy amongst each other. We hope and expect that this phenomenon will actually also create more sustainability awareness in citizens. But that's not a given. So we could expect that the having to deal, let's say, with the nature of your own energy environment is going to make people more ecologically aware, and maybe they will also connect the dots between what's happening in their energy environment and in other parts of their environment. We know of energy communities that are, for example, also measuring air quality levels and wanting to discuss all kinds of sustainability questions amongst each other. But maybe that's something that only certain communities do and others don't. So in general, we do see effects here, and we do expect that this can, could be leapfrogging of ecological awareness among people. But at the same time, it can also become more complicated for them, and they will have more to think about on an everyday basis. And if they have lives that are already full or complicated by other phenomena, maybe it's something that actually kind of will shy them away from discussing those things, and they will want to find out how they can avoid risks. So on the one hand, it can go, let's say, to a bright side where people will know how to adjust their behavior to both the new technologies, but also to their setting when it comes to energy, be it high or low priced. But we have to also be cautious for other effects to occur. And that's one of those reasons why it's important to really understand differences between settings from one neighborhood and really one block to another. I think it's very important to look at the social acceptance of PEDs because it's not one thing, and there's still lots of pathways into the future. I think for one, it will evolve a change in how we look at also consumption and markets. Currently, we are used to consumers being really able to choose their energy supplier. And sometimes if you are part of a smart grid, a local grid, that might be less so. You will have to enter into a contract with a group of neighbors. And then you will be fixed to that particular contract with your neighbors, and you can't just choose another supplier the next year around. And it's also a question if you really are going into a situation where you have to negotiate your energy level with your neighbors. We're not sure if that's actually a realistic scenario for most citizens and most residents, but it might just be the case. So social acceptance is about both, how behavior is going to change of residents, how their economic options, their choices are going to be affected, but also if it's important for them to be sort of a more active engagement factor themselves. So do they have to really check their energy dashboard, for example, and make the decision themselves whether or not to use their washing machines or whether or not to charge their electronic vehicle. From where I stand, I can see most of those different options still happening. And I think also that some of those options will be more relevant for certain resident groups. But if you make the wrong combination of, let's say, resident groups with certain preferences, but you confront them with a PED solution that doesn't really fit their character, then acceptance might be pretty low, and you will have, it will not be a PED because the positive energy mark will not be achieved, and maybe even worse so, people might be quite disgruntled by the energy transition phenomenon that they have found themselves in. So I see still a lot of opportunity for us to research the aspects of social acceptance, also considering the fact that there will be a mixing and matching of different PED typologies and different resident groups. Something I would like to recommend to practitioners working on positive energy districts is to see what are the situations where you can early on already start working with residents. We know that it's more difficult to find out what are the requirements of residents when they are not there. So it might be easy to start figuring out, okay, this is the potential pet that could land in a certain spot. It might be easy to design a building that checks all the boxes from the start. That's really one model to pursue. It might seem more difficult to work with existing neighborhoods and existing building blocks, but actually something that could really facilitate the pet transition there is that the residents come in with their own ideas and that they can be pretty precise at formulating what are their requirements and needs in the energy transition at large. So both models, for both models, there's something to say, and I would recommend and appeal to, for example, cities wanting to see more pets happening in their city and wanting to participate with people, to experiment really with both models. So if you have a place in the city where you're going to build new housing stock in a newly developed neighborhood, but also in a neighborhood that's already there and that needs retrofit of buildings. And maybe to compare both cases.